Alright, so when you're ready to join me on the mat today, we're going to start in a tabletop position on all fours. You will hear this a lot throughout classes. It's a good way to warm up the body, setting up a foundation for some other postures that I'm going to go through today. We're going to go through some warm-up shapes, and we're going to go into a sun salutation A. I'm going to give you so many modifications for this, you won't even know what to do with them all, but giving you plenty of options to be able to move and breathe and enjoy this practice in your body. So, coming on to all fours, knees beneath your hips, these wrists are going to come beneath your shoulders. If this is too much for your wrist, then I want you to take your fingertips out just a little bit, decreasing that angle. If it's still too much, you can roll up the front of your mat or take a blanket to just lift the heel a little bit. This is decreasing the angle so that you don't have as much pressure on your wrist, especially if you suffer from carpal tunnel, arthritis, or anything like that. We're going to move through some shapes called cat and cow. These are two poses that we use a lot to just put breath with movement and start to move the body. So I'm going to tuck my toes under, and as I breathe in through the nose, inhaling, my belly button will drop down. I'm going to send my chest forward. My arms are staying straight, but I'm not locking out my elbows. As you exhale, flip the feet back over, chin towards your chest, belly button to spine. Nice. We'll just go back and forth here. So there's a lot of tendency to be really rigid in the body, especially when you're starting out a yoga practice, trying to get the shapes just right. It can be confusing. But the most important thing that I want you to take away from this practice is the fact that yoga just means union or yoke. So anytime that you're matching breath with movement, you're doing yoga, all right? So I'm going to give you some cues and some suggestions to really keep your body safe throughout this practice. But it's not important what the pose looks like. It's most important what the pose feels like. So if you're having to strain, or I call it white knuckle it, then maybe try something different. You can keep going and breathing here. I often tell students that practicing yoga is like trying on clothes, right? If it's tight or if it's uncomfortable, just doesn't feel right, then we're going to take it off and we're going to try something new. But just like you would try on clothes, we're not just going to rip it over our heads and then rip it right back off. We're going to slowly put on an outfit, try it on, see how it feels, and then we'll slowly back out of it. If you've ever put on something that's a little bit too tight or a little bit uncomfortable, you may recall having a little bit harder time getting out of it. So we want to back out slowly, especially when we're tight and uncomfortable, so that we can avoid injury. Anytime throughout your practice, if you're breathing slowly and you're moving intentionally, you're going to be safe. If we can tune into our body will always let us know that if it's in danger before we're actually causing harm. From here, we're going to come into a pose called thread the needle. Taking your right arm up to the sky with an inhale, exhale, take that right arm all the way underneath your left arm, come down onto right shoulder, right cheek, and then those left fingertips can reach forward or wrap around your low back for a half bind. You can see my booty sticking up into the air, but my hips are still square. And I'm just going to encourage you to soften down into the earth and breathe here. So we're opening up the backside of that right shoulder. If you've ever done one of these stretches, or if you can recall in the PE days where you just pull your arm across and hug it, that's kind of what we're doing here. We're going to do a pose called downward facing dog in just a moment, not just yet, but it's going to be a little bit of weight bearing on the shoulders. So we just want to bring some awareness to that area, bring some breath awareness to it, and just show it a little love. So take a couple more breaths here. And as you start to get more comfortable making shapes, maybe these odd shapes that you've never done before, I want you to just focus on the sensations of your breath. If it's able and accessible for you, breathing only in and out through the nose. Maybe as you lie here and thread the needle, start to notice where your breath is coming. Is it stopping right at the top of your chest? And if so, that's okay. We never criticize or judge in our yoga practice, we just observe. So if it's stopping in your chest, can you take it a little bit lower down to your low ribs and maybe all the way into your belly? Our exhale will start down at the bottom, working its way all the way up, breathing in and out. So just a little breath mechanics. We're gonna stay here for just a couple more breaths, allowing your shoulder to open. We start from the bottom up when we breathe. So if you can just focus on that, it takes the breath a little bit lower. You might find a little more space, and you might find that you're able to release a little more tension. From here, on your next breath in, take that left hand underneath the left shoulder, press into the earth. We'll reach that right arm up to the sky, open back up. Exhale, float your way back into tabletop position. Check in for a moment. Maybe it would feel good for one round of cat-cow here, maybe 2 or 3. And then when you're ready, left arm reaches, inhale. Exhale, left arm underneath the right. Come down onto left shoulder, left cheek. Right arm can reach forward or wrap behind you. Now, a part of our focus in our yoga practice is to bring some balance to the physical body and to also bring balance to the mental and emotional bodies as well. What you may notice almost instantly is that our bodies are not symmetrical. We're not going to feel the same on side to side, from side to side. That's okay. But part of what we're going to do in our practice is just observe this. And so maybe if you hold a little bit more tension in that left shoulder, you might stay here for a couple more rounds of breath. And that's completely fine. One of the big benefits of practicing at home is you're not on anyone else's agenda. You can always just pause me and do your own thing. Really, the purpose here is being intentional and being purposeful with our movement and linking it to something greater than just physical outcomes, right? So if we're just focusing on ways to move our body, then we're essentially doing calisthenics. But we want to be very intentional and very mindful of our movements throughout the practice of yoga. So stay here for a couple more breaths on that left shoulder. And then when you're ready, that right hand's going to come back underneath the right shoulder on your inhale. Left fingertips will reach back up. And you're going to find your way back into a tabletop position. Now, if you've ever done yoga before, you're probably familiar with the chaturanga. So we're going to go ahead and break that down. I'm going to do a separate video on really some alignment principles and some strengthening exercises for chaturanga. But for the purpose of this one, we're just going to focus on not injuring ourselves and staying safe. So my knees will stay down on the ground. I'm going to draw my belly button in and up as I inhale, shift forward. I'm going to make sure that my elbows aren't winging out to the side, but they're pointing straight back as I lower down. All right, from here, I'm going to take a deep breath in. Exhale, press back into child's pose. So my hips are going towards my heels, arms reaching forward. This is perhaps one of the most important poses because it's the pose that I want you to return to anytime that you're feeling overwhelmed, anytime that something is not working for your body, anytime that you're losing your breath. So if you're having to huff and puff throughout your practice, you've lost the yoga. So child's pose is your home. You can come back, you can tune into yourself, tune into your breath. The deeper you breathe, the quicker you'll bring that heart rate back down to normal. It's calming and soothing and a place that you can just be your own. So just keeping this pose in mind, take a couple of breaths here, and then we're going to continue to move through that chaturanga, or that modified chaturanga, and add on. So belly button to spine, inhale, come back forward into that tabletop position, bringing shoulders slightly past the wrist, bend the elbows lower. This time we're going to come into a low cobra. Pressing into the tops of the feet, lift your kneecaps so my thighs are active. I'm going to squeeze my elbows towards one another, roll my shoulders back. Inhale, lift that chest bone, send it forward. And then maybe rock your head from side to side, release your neck. Maybe your kitten will stand on your back. This one's not going to last long because we're going to exhale back to that child's pose. Take a couple of breaths here. And then when you're ready, you'll come back into tabletop position. Tuck the toes under. Lift the hips up and back into a downward facing dog. Whoa, I said that a little fast. Let's break it down again. So if you're comfortable in your downward dog, go ahead and stay and pedal it out. Otherwise, we're going to start with a really firm grip of the mat. So my fingertips are gripping down. That fleshy part in between the index finger and the thumb is pressing down. I'm going to take my forearm and spiral it in and my biceps spiraling it out. That's gonna hug muscle to bone. So one of the big benefits of yoga, increasing that bone density, that bone mass and strength. So my joints aren't doing any of the work. Toes are tucked under. You can see that my thigh bones are already tracking right out of my hips because my knees are underneath my hips. So I've got a good foundation here. Make sure you're not sagging into your low back. We don't want any low back pain coming from our practice. And then send your hips up and back. It's perfectly fine to bend your knees. And then it doesn't matter if those heels ever physically touch, but we're going to root them down towards the ground. Take your thigh bones, press them straight back. Stretch your chest back towards your upper thighs. And then just make sure your head and neck is loose. If you feel yourself rocking to the outside edge of your hands, go ahead and take that fleshy part and press it down in between the index finger and the thumb. And then you're going to feel those forearms start to work, feel the shoulders start to work. Just notice your breath. If it becomes too much, drop your knees, press it back to child's pose. Maybe bring it back into tabletop position and try a couple more times. Just see how it feels. Get that foundation, almost creating a little bit of a muscle memory. However, we don't step onto the yoga mat to move in ways that we already know how to move. We're here to break through habitual patterns, physically, mentally, emotionally, energetically, to break away from things that no longer serve us. So recognize that yoga is a practice because it changes day to day, breath to breath. If you practice in the morning, if you practice in the evening, there's so many variables. And so we should never expect anything of our body. In fact, when we start to expect and assume things of our body in our practice, we're inviting ego in. We want ego to go away and just really be present with our inner truth, the inner spirit, our light that lives inside of us. So if you're not there now, go ahead and make your way back to that upside down V, downward facing dog. And then start to slowly walk your feet forward. We're going to come into a forward fold. Now, my feet aren't together. My heels are underneath my sitting bones. That's the bone right in the center of your butt cheek. And I have tight hamstrings, so I'm going to bend my knees. If you feel any pull in that low back, bend your knees a little bit more. You can even rest your torso on the upper thighs. Maybe grab opposite elbows coming into ragdoll, and you can rock it from side to side. Just notice how that feels. And then we'll release the fingertips down to the ground. We're going to come into a half lift, flat back. With your inhale, take those fingertips right below your knees. Make sure you're not rounding, make sure you're not arching. But lengthen the crown of your head forward and gaze down. You don't want to gaze out because we don't want to crank on that neck. And brace yourself with your core, belly button in and up. Anytime we're folding forward, we really want to pull that belly button in to protect our low back. And then press those shoulder blades back towards your tailbone. Exhale as you fold. Bending your knees here, we'll press into the base of the big toe, the base of the pinky toe, center point of the heel. Start to tilt your pelvis forward, belly button in, as you slowly roll up. Low ribs eventually coming over those pelvic bones as we come into Tadasana, or mountain pose. Roll the shoulders down, bring palms to heart center, and breathe. My knees are soft, my muscles are active, my breath is steady. Just find a new way to stand and be here. I'm going to walk you through one round of Sun Salutation A so that you're able to modify and work with this. Take as many breaths as you need in each pose to feel the actual pose. Reaching the arms up overhead, deep breath in. Take the breath in as far as you can. As you exhale, bend those knees, belly button in, protecting that low back as you fold. Take a halfway lift, inhale, lengthen your spine. Full inhale, don't short yourself. Exhale, let it go. Plant the palms, stepping it back into plank. So I'm going to go ahead and modify and drop my knees. I'm still engaging my core, so I'm not dropping in my low back. This is not cow pose. And then inhale, send it forward. Exhale, elbows in, lower down to the floor. Imagine that you're falling and you want to brace yourself for that fall. Tuck the toes under, press into the tops of the feet, lift the kneecaps. Inhale, lift the chest, send it forward, elbows together. And then for this round, we're going to exhale back back into child's pose. If you're ready, you can go ahead and press back into downward dog here, but we're going to be gentle with our body and our breath in this moment. Inhale, back into tabletop position. Exhale, tuck the toes under, lift the hips, downward facing dog. Take 3 to 5 breaths here on your own, just exploring the sensation of being upside down. Noticing what's going on in your body. Noticing the quality of your breath, the inhales, the exhales, the rhythm, the pace, the depth. And then notice any thoughts that you may be having. Acknowledge that thoughts are normal, they're human, but just focus on being present with your body and being present with your breath. When you're ready, you can walk it forward. Heels underneath the sitting bones. Halfway lift, inhale, exhale, fold. Bend the knees, press into those feet. Inhale, reach it all the way up to the sky. And exhale, hands to heart center. I hope you enjoyed this video. Practice these sun salutes over and over again as you get more comfortable. Feel the heat, feel your power. And until next time, namaste.